undoubtedly lead them to success. Both boys and girls hockey teams also have respectable standings. The Best Buddies hosted a holiday dance at the community center. It is so fun for the buddies and the students to be able to get together to simply be friends and have fun. Our program and our school excels in making the Best Buddies feel appreciated and welcome in our community. Many students in the program are also looking forward to attending a Celtics game in February with the buddies. A couple of things to look forward to is a prom fashion show, which is actually tomorrow night at 7 to raise money for the junior prom, and a multitude of volunteer opportunities await as well, whether it be the Orleans MLK breakfast or working with the AmeriCorps, also on Martin Luther King Day. A sizable amount of Monomoy students participate in the community service on MLK Day each year. Additionally, the mock trial team is preparing for its first trial next week. We have been preparing since November with the affidavits and stipulations, and we will perform the trial against Sturgis at the Barnstable County Courthouse. Lastly, it is a very exciting time for seniors. As our cap and gown fittings and scholarship application deadlines grow nearer, it becomes real that we are actually leaving. Additionally, we have had a number of seniors accepted to schools. Providence College, Norwich, Boston College, Fordham University, Curry College, and UMass are just some of the great schools at Monomoy that students at Monomoy have the choice of attending. We are very excited to hear the remaining decisions. Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions? Nope. Well done.
Thank you.
That's always our highlight. Thank you. And next we move on to recognitions. Mr. Carpenter, any recognitions for tonight?
We have several, and again, I think this is sort of a testament to our community and the support we get. First, I'd like to recognize that we received a $5,000 grant from the state for the safe and supportive schools for St. Peter's Lutheran Church. We have received $2,200 for 11 homeless students who were receiving $200 each. The Art of Charity, $1,000 for Deb Donovan to help defray cost of the Roby Hager, a Broadway performer, visiting the high school for drama workshops and rehearsals. The Art of Charity for a number of donations. We have $1,990 to Rachel Barnes to defray the costs of round-trip travel to and from school and the airport for the spring trip to London. Also from the Art of Charity for Rich Oldax, who's one of our technology teachers here at the high school, to provide 2 3D printers and printing supplies. Also from the Art of Charity, John Dixon for a high school psychology class to visit Harwich Elementary to play board games with Miss Brady and Miss Topeka's kindergarten classes. And for the Art of Charity, $225 to Catherine Ware of Chatham Elementary for a pack of 40 Bristol bots to help students participate in coding and the robotics club and understanding how circuits work to control a robot. And lastly, from the Art of Charity, $296 for the middle school to purchase some video equipment. Then we have Cape Cod 5 Foundation that provides $500 mini grants. We have Carol Fiocco for the Morning Snack Exchange, Fran Jorgensen for Mosaic Mirrors, Kate Serafini for Pickleball, and Donna Chase for Sensory Solutions for Sensitive Students. The Harwich Cultural Council, $600 for grade 2 Harwich Elementary School to subsidize a trip to the Harwich Junior Theater to see Really Rosie in February. The Nauset Garden Club mini grant for $500 for Carol Freitas for connecting with food from the garden to the kitchen, and also a $500 grant from the Nauset Garden Club to the middle school to study existing shellfish reefs and beds in collaboration with the Chatham Shellfish Department. Then donations at Chatham Elementary School, Teresa Malone, Pat Freeland, and the Masons for backpacks and supplies for 17 students. From the VFW Auxiliary Club, $50 Stop and Shop gift card. Beehive monthly food program to support 6 families. Food Pantry Holiday Break food program for families. The Angel Fund, 2 laptops, a Christmas tree voucher, Crossroads for Kids Summer Camp, Audubon Camp, Chatham Anglers Baseball Clinic, Caitlin's Closet, Masons, $500, and an anonymous donation of $140 for Miss Gaffney and Miss Mulvihill's classes to see Wonder at the Orpheum Theater. In addition, Mr. McLean at the Orpheum opened at 8 a.m. for a special viewing. And lastly, we have the Harwich Children's Fund, which provided $1,000 in gift certificates to the high school, $838 in gifts to Harwich Elementary, $118 in gifts to Chatham Elementary, $268 in gifts and certificates to the middle school, and $100 to needy children in the Harwich Community Center. So again,
Wow.
thanks for all the support, and I think we have to keep in mind that, we've been, but between our last meeting and now, the holiday seasons have come and gone, so I appreciate all the community support for the families, particularly in our communities and the schools.
That list was impressive. It's excellent, so thank you to all of those who donated. Next on our agenda, we move into our reports and discussions, and we have Mrs. McGuire and our special education budget report. Hello.
Good evening, Melissa McGuire, Director of Student Services, and I'm pleased to share this evening our budget for special education. I always start off, and I've been saying this for years and years now, that our special education costs are visible, but oftentimes our students with disabilities are invisible when we think about our budget and the cost. So I've said this for many years. So what I want to focus on are obviously many things here, but our enrollment, circuit breaker, out of district, mitigating costs, transportation, extended year services or summer school, contracted services, operational costs, grants, future considerations, and then conclusion. So first looking at enrollment, and I'm not going to go through obviously all the numbers, but what's really important to understand with special education is that enrollment is really revolving. There's never a point in time where we have the same number of students who are receiving special education services or the same number of students who are exiting. So if we look at our October 1 numbers for this year, and it's pretty consistent for the past couple of years. For October 1, we were at 315 students for enrollment. But what we really are servicing as of December is 324. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why that number fluctuates. First of all, the number includes students who have been referred for an evaluation. That number, that 324 number, it includes the fact that we have referral students in evaluation who under the law are considered special education. So we have to have them in our count for special education. It doesn't mean that they will all become eligible, but we still have to include them as a special education student until we determine eligibility or they are not found eligible. It also includes students who may terminate from special education. So that number 315 to 324 includes all those variables. And that will continue to move throughout the year. That number will be very different at the end of the year as well. It also includes, just thinking about children who are turning 3. Children turn 3 all year long. They don't turn 3 in September. So we have to take that into consideration, as well as students who might move in from other towns who are receiving special education services, and those who school choice at the beginning of the year as well. So as you can see, it's an there's an incredible fluctuation in the numbers. So when it says current, that was a point in time when I wrote the report. And of course, that's been a couple of weeks. So even now, that number has changed. Students may have already had meetings and been eligible or found not eligible for special education. And those who were evaluated since September were 20. And then we've also had 30 that have exited. So none of the numbers add up. So if you try to make any sense of adding numbers up, they don't work for enrollment with special education. Circuit breaker, the only point I want to make about circuit breaker is, originally the law was to fund 75% reimbursement based on a net claim. And of course, it's very rare that we see that 75% reimbursement. In 2016 we saw it, and now for 2018 it's down to 65%. So that number also fluctuates. So it's not a number that we can always count on what the state had originally put into the regulations for 75%. So we have to really monitor that and be cautious of how we're projecting what our circuit breaker reimbursement will be. For our out-of-district, these are the students who require specialized services in a very unique setting that we are not able to provide in our public school setting. For this year, we currently have 16 students in out-of-district. Next year, we are projecting 12 students in out-of-district, and that number is low because we expect 2 students to return to the high school and 2 students who will be exiting programs in out-of-district. Again, that doesn't mean that there might be a situation where we have a student with a unique need, with a significant need that may require out-of-district, but this is just our current and our projections for next year. In terms of looking at our considerations, it is a team decision on whether or not a student requires specialized instruction in an alternative settings. Typically, it's because the disabilities are very unique. We also have what's called the move-in law. So, for example, if a student who is in an out-of-district placement moves into the district before April 1st, that district they currently reside in are responsible for that bill, basically that tuition until the end of the year, and then we would pick up that tuition as of July 1st. If they move in after April 1st or on April 1st, the previous district is not only responsible for the current year up till June 30th, they were also responsible for the following year, which also counts for us too. So if we have a student that moves into another district on April 1st who is out of district with a tuition, we would be responsible even though they didn't live here for the following year. So that's a very tricky situation as well. And of course, the other consideration is unforeseen circumstances in terms of a student who may have some serious mental health issues or behavioral issues that weren't necessarily present, and we then need to be able to provide them their services that can only be done in an out-of-district placement. So the good news in the district is we have a lot of programs that mitigate our costs. So we have our integrated preschool program in both elementary schools. We have an intensive program at Howard Elementary that services several children. We have an intensive program at the middle school. We have an intensive program at the high school, and we are projecting an additional intensive program, which I'm going to speak about a little later. And then we have our post-graduation program, which is the 18 to 22-year-olds. Under the law, students who are receiving special education are entitled to those services up until the age of 22, and that's a team decision, and that typically is a student who requires significant specialized instruction and related services to meet their goals and to make effective progress.
We have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a quick question. Is there any intensive program at Chatham Elementary School?
There is a program at Chatham Elementary that supports students with intensive special needs, but it's not a substantially separate program. That the Howard Elementary program services typically students who are on the autism spectrum, but there is a program in an intensive special needs teacher at Chatham Elementary, but it's not a program per se where kids are all day long. They're receiving services in and out of that program.
Thank you.
For transportation, this is another area that is sometimes an ouch in terms of the cost of transportation. The numbers have fluctuated, if you look at this particular slide, over the years because we've moved some of the costs into our federal grant. The reason we did that is over time that the grant was being used to support personnel, and what was happening is it was almost kind of what I call a double dipping of kind of MTA fees. So we had to pay 9% on top of that from the grant. And so what we said is let's pull all of that out and put some dollars in there that would be straight dollars for dollars in the grant. So we did move our transportation costs into the federal grant, and then we're looking to continue that. The difference between the FY18 and the 19 is we still do have money in the appropriated budget for transportation, and again that fluctuates, and we have to pay attention to that, especially looking at what the increases will be. So we do our best to project what it will be given especially the students who are going out of district and where those programs are. Our extended year services. This is a program during the summer, and it's for students who are demonstrating substantial regression, and they require continuity of services to ensure that they do not regress more so than their peers. There's typically a formula for that because we understand that all students, when they leave our educational setting for the summer will regress a little bit. In other words, they don't necessarily come back remembering everything they learned the previous year. And for typically developing students, we look at about a 4-week period where they come back, we're reviewing and concepts and making sure that they understand what they left with. For a student with special needs, sometimes we look at it as doubling that. So when you go beyond what it takes a typical student to recoup in terms of their understanding and knowledge, we have to make sure that they do not, our students with special education services don't go far beyond that. So that's why we provide extended year services. And so this includes special education teachers and related service providers. And these costs here also include transportation. Our contracted services, this is for our medical and therapeutic services, such as our physical therapist, our vision and our orientation and mobility services that we contract through Perkins, any specialized contracted service that we don't actually have a staff person, or we have very few students who require that service, we contract out. In terms of the psychological services, what we've done is we've also moved that into our grant as well, because we do use some consultants to provide additional psychological support for our students. Typically, they are board-certified behavior analysts, or they're psychologists who can do tests that we're not necessarily qualified to do, where we need to really understand what a student's needs are. And then we have some operational costs under special education, legal fees, testing supplies. Testing supplies are interesting because we have a significant number of tests that we use to evaluate various areas of disability. The problem with testing is that once a test is revised, you only have 2 years, in fact, to switch out that test and be in compliance, and they're very costly. So what we try to do is parcel out over the 2 years, so maybe 2 schools get the test year 1 and another school gets it year 2, because they can be quite costly, and each evaluator needs their own instrument. General supplies can be anything for the classroom, specialized instruction needs and materials that are needed for students, specialized equipment that are needed for students, same with the textbooks and the technology. If a student needs an iPad or a certain type of technology, these are the 2 areas that we use to provide those services. And then finally, of course, professional development. We always want to keep our special educators informed and skilled. In terms of our grants, we do have... Oh, I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry, just one, I was wondering on the previous slide, if you might give a theoretical example of why the projected budget for FY19 is only $70,000 as opposed to the budgeted amount this year, which is close to double that.
We moved it into the grant.
Oh.
So we moved a lot of that contracted services into the grant.
Thank you.
So that's what, yeah, sometimes...
You said that.
That's okay. I'm glad you asked. Whoops, okay. And actually this first grant, which is our federal IDA, that is the grant in which we moved our transportation and a lot of that contracted service into the grant. That's an entitlement we get every year. If you noticed, it has gone down a little bit from last year to this year. All the grants have decreased this year. Not only decreased, but they are down to 0. So our improvement grant, which was our professional development grant, which we used really to provide specialized training to staff, was cut to 0 this year. So we were not able to provide some of those unique specialized training to our special educators. Our early childhood grant, which was preschool activities, which was $1,400, that was also cut from the state. And really what happened is those dollars went to level 5 schools. So instead of parceling out amongst all the districts, they really took all those grant funds and gave it to the level 5 schools. Secondary transition, that was a grant we received last year. That was a one-time grant. So there was no other grant opportunities for secondary transition. Our Safe and Supportive Schools, last year, we did have a $15,000 grant that was awarded, if you remember, and then the 9C cuts took it. We got it one day, and the very next day, they said, give us the check back. So the grant funds have certainly decreased. They've decreased significantly over the past year. In my time as, PPS director, the funds that I want to say have been cut 50% in the last 8 years. It's really, and it's really tough to plan and project because you rely sometimes on grants to do the work that we do. Some competitive grants that we have been able to get though is, we did get the Attorney General grant for youth opioid prevention. That's not pending award. We actually have been awarded that grant. And that grant's being used to train staff at all levels at the 2 elementary, middle, and high school and the Botfin Life Skills curriculum, which is an anti-addiction curriculum, which goes pre-K through 8, grades 3, sorry, wrong grades, grades 3 through high school. So we have currently staff that are interested and will be taking that training and then going to New York for the TOT, which is the training of teachers, to implement this curriculum. We did get a behavioral health, Safe and Supportive Schools grant for $5,000, which is to support us completing the behavioral health assessment tool, which is a tool the state uses, and I've used the tool in the past, and it's a fabulous tool to really align with what we're doing and what the state is recommending for social emotional learning and behavioral health. We received a Tower Foundation grant to implement mental health first aid in our community. We provide 3 parent trainings a year. There's one going on right now. And then we've just written a grant to Tower Foundation for $36,000 to support our SEL curriculum training and consultation. So we're waiting to hear about that. The other grant that's out there, it's not our grant, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but NAMI has a several $100,000 grant to bring Dr. Stubert Albron from Mass General Hospital in to train all of our staff in collaborative problem solving, and I'm going to share a little bit more about that later. So some of the future considerations, last year when I came to you, I had shared with you the need for a team chair at the high school and at the middle school. We were able to have a team chair at the high school who also is the out-of-district coordinator, and that has been incredibly helpful, beneficial, not only as a team chair, but to support the special education teachers at the high school, the administration at the high school. So that's been wonderful. Right now at the middle school, we still have the school psychologist splitting her time between being a school psychologist and a team chair. It's not effective, it's not efficient, and it's not, quite frankly, helpful to our students not to have the school psychologist available. We have an adjustment counselor and a school psychologist. That is the only clinical group we have in the middle school, and we're facing students with a lot of mental health challenges and behavioral challenges, and we need some more clinical support. So that's a consideration of team chair and a 0.5 adjustment counselor at the middle school. If we were to get a team chair, and we could certainly look at a 0.5, it would give the middle school a full-time school psychologist. So we can certainly look at a 0.5 team chair and a 0.5 adjustment counselor, which would really provide the support necessary for the middle school. And then I did put the future consideration for the social emotional learning. It's there if we don't get the grant, obviously we need to find some way in which to support Second Step, which is the curriculum that we spent a year kind of looking at different curricula and identifying one that met all of the needs, especially the 5 core competencies we feel are important for social emotional learning. So we have to make sure we pay attention to that, and that it does have a cost associated with it. And then the last one is the special education teacher at the high school. So right now for our intensive programming, we have 1 teacher, and in that classroom, he supports a variety of students, but what's happened is it's become too large of a classroom and it's supporting too many diverse students, meaning there's a group of students who need behavioral support, and there's a group of students who really need kind of that cognitive, that academic support, and we really need to provide that service in a different way, and we haven't been able to do that. We believe that this will be cost neutral because we are bringing 2 students back from out of district, so we believe it's a cost neutral position. So the other thing, I look at as well is, looking at kind of a budget analysis and comparative comparative analysis of comparable districts and then our Cape Cod districts. Right now, in terms of our budget, Monomoy is 15.3% of the overall budget is a special education budget. The state's is 21%. And then across all the comparable districts and across the Cape Cod districts, Monomoy is the lowest in terms of the percentage of their budget that's allocated of the overall budget. So I think Monomoy is doing a really, really good job paying attention to the costs and staying certainly well below what other districts are doing and what the state averages for their budgets. So in conclusion, Monomoy has incredibly strong programs. They continue to get stronger. We have low out-of-district enrollment. We're moving from 16 to 12 students out of district. That's a significantly low number. We have effective use of our consultants. And then in terms of our considerations, we always want to look at strengthening our infrastructure to ensure efficient and effective practices. And that's where we are looking at, kind of the clinical needs and teachers making sure we're supporting the students the way they need to be supported without having to fit the student into a model. We need to have a model that fits the student needs. That is my conclusion for the budget, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Any questions for Mrs. McGuire? Ms. Stout?
On professional development, when there's a professional development being held for the general population of teachers, but it's about subject of special ed, where does that come out of on the budget?
When there's I'm sorry.
If you have training on something like suicide or depression or learning disabilities or something, and you have it for all of the teachers or general ed teachers, does that come out of the special ed budget or?
There's professional development line item in the appropriated budget overall. So there's several pockets where there is professional development. Under special education, there is a line item for professional development in each of the schools that's special education related. So I didn't have to rely on grants. So, we look at what trainings are out there, and we use the school-based professional development under special education for that.
So just to be sure I understand, so your special ed budget pays for the training of regular ed teachers also if the subject is special ed? No. So there typically isn't. If we're providing professional development and I guess you'd have to identify special ed. Suicide prevention is not special education. Some of these other, like Second Step, the social emotional learning, that's not special education. So when we're talking about special education, that means sending somebody specifically to, say, a neuroscience type of understanding the brain, learning disabilities, maybe a behavioral training, so that's related specifically. But most of the trainings don't really come under special ed that all teachers are getting. That's a general education. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Russell?
Claire, good job. I've got 3 quick questions, primarily just for my own clarification. The school choice, and you probably don't have this detail, but it would interest me. The number of school choice youngsters who come to us with an IEP, K-12, and the number of youngsters who are on an IEP that leave us for whatever reason. I'd be interested to know at some point, is that a neutral, or are there
For school
net gain?
choice? Leaving for school choice?
Not to send someone to the Mass Hospital, but someone who comes to us in the 3rd grade with an IEP, and then all of a sudden they decide to go to Yarmouth Elementary School.
I don't have that number, but that's a number I can definitely get, because obviously we track students who exit and enter for school choice. So I can certainly get that number for you.
Okay,
I don't think it's necessarily a balance.
Yeah.
I don't think, so for somebody moves, comes here for school choice and they're receiving special education services, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're asking, are there also students who do that and then also leave, or do
Yeah.
we? So,
Yes, yeah.
yeah, I don't think that's a balance, and I don't think there's as many students that do that are bouncing in terms of coming here for school choice and then deciding, to go back. There might be a couple. School choice is interesting with special education. There are a couple of things. Of course, one, the reimbursement is different. There's an incremental reimbursement we receive for the services that we provide. But if a student is placed in an out-of-district placement, we are not responsible for that tuition. The hometown from where they came is actually responsible fiscally. So there's a couple of interesting pieces with school choice and special education. But I don't think that number is very big. I think just in the time I've been here, I want to say I've only maybe seen 1 or 2 students who school choiced here and then decided to go back to their home district for the programming that was happening, in their home district.
okay, good, yeah. So of the 100 or 200 youngsters that come to us from different schools, regular ed students, there aren't 70 or 60 youngsters who are on IEPs. It's more
No.
like a handful of youngsters coming and going.
There's about 30.
Yeah, okay, yeah. 2 questions. How does the circuit breaker youngsters, the column that says students claimed, without getting into real specifics, what allows us to claim a circuit breaker youngster?
So there's a foundation amount that you have to meet that foundation amount in terms of cost. So usually your out-of-district students, for the most part, meet the foundation, okay? Amount, let's just say it's 40,000. What's the exact amount? 38,000. So you start with $38,000. If that cost is 38, for every dollar over that $38,000 is where you start to get the reimbursement. So it's not in the first 38,000, it's on all the dollars after that 38,000.
Yep.
So it's typically your higher cost, but it starts with 38,000. So our district, I think our lowest is 47, I want to say off the top of my head, which is the collaborative, is 47,000. So there's that 38,000, and so the dollars thereafter is where we'll get a reimbursement.
Yep.
We also get reimbursement on other services, so if there is speech or language that is also part of their program, we can bill for that as well. Students who have one-to-one aids and services, oftentimes we'll meet with, for example, the students that are in the Harwich Elementary intensive program, some of those students will meet circuit breaker.
Yep.
So that's why the number might look different.
Yep. Last question, and I think I know the answer. The budget analysis, it's 15.3% of our budget is dedicated to its special needs versus the state 21. Would you say that's good budgeting and we're getting a lot of bang for our buck versus the 21% of the state reflects resources that we haven't got to yet?
It's not a question about resources we haven't gotten to yet. It's the 15.3, in, again, my second year here and having been elsewhere, that's an incredibly low number and percentage of the budget. Looking at, if we didn't look at comparable districts, when we looked at other districts, you would see probably even higher percentages of that budget, of the overall budget. I think I think Monomoy does a really nice job with programs, and it's small enough that it can do some programs. Can we do more? You're asking the director of special education, can we do more? Of course we can, and that's why when looking at that high school program, we need to do something different, because we can't keep fitting, kids into what we have. We need to fit into what kids need. So it's a great use of the resources we do have that are effective and efficient.
Thanks, Melissa.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. And I believe you're staying up there again for our social emotional learning overview.
Hi, I'm Melissa McGuire, I'm the Director of Student Services. And I'm going to present an update on our social emotional learning. Of course, I'm not sure if you all know, but this is my passion. So I'm excited to present this. In terms of just an overview, Understanding social and emotional learning is the process through which children and adults acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, and establish and maintain positive relationships and make responsible decisions. So when we look at social emotional learning, there are 5 core competencies that we want to make sure we address, which are self-management, self-awareness, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. So those are the 5 areas we continually want to make sure we're improving for students. When we look at the benefits of social and emotional learning, there are so many benefits. First of all, one, which is the biggest one that I should have slapped right in the middle because all of these others follow, but there is a meta-analysis out there that providing social emotional learning to students, even just 30 minutes a week, gives you 11% academic gain. And that is in some other work that we've done and shown. But certainly it goes back to those 5 core competencies. That it's improving decision-making, improving relationships, improving self-awareness, confidence, improving all of these things that we're really needing students to have so that they are prepared for their learning and for success. So last year we formed an SEL committee, steering committee, and as you can see we have many members, community, we have parents, we have a student who joined us this year, we have special educators, we have general educators, we have administrators, and I'm thrilled and certainly blessed to have the number of people who are supporting our vision for social emotional learning. And that committee, and I'm not going to read this, but the committee was able to develop a vision that incorporated those 5 core competencies that we felt were really important for our students. So this year we have scheduled 4 meetings. We've already had our first meeting, and what we were able to accomplish is certainly the updates on what was going on, discussing the Excel project, which is, I will explain that in a few minutes, and we established new goals. We also reviewed our social emotional learning plan, which is the guidance from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And I'll share what those look like as well. So in terms of the goals, we looked at 4 areas. We looked at SEL integration, community partners, a marketing plan, and advising. So for the SEL integration, what the steering committee would like to support is the schools by recognizing and celebrating the pockets of excellence and promoting the integration of SEL across curricular areas that support educators. They looked at community partners. One of the things we talked a lot about at our last meeting is really kind of building our committee and building our support in the community, and even looking at how to make sure that we're connecting with other agencies. For example, the Children's Cove partnership that we have. As a matter of fact, tonight, and I know Jenna's here because she drove some students. Thank you, because I didn't know how I was going to drive them and get back. But we have a cohort of students that is part of a task force, and having looked at the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, identifying areas that they, as teams, want to be able to educate and promote their peers. And at the end of the year, they'll have their own marketing project to promote. I think that they're looking at is the teen dating and violence is the area they targeted. So that's an example of partnerships. We'd like to continue to grow that. Our marketing plan, we feel that we want to actually brand what we are doing. We want the community to know what we're doing. So we're going to think about how we can get somebody with marketing skills on board with us to really create a unique brand of our social emotional learning that the community can get behind. And of course, the committee will continue to advise the overall coordination and support of our social emotional learning activities. So what we did last year is we spent a significant amount of time reviewing curriculum that might be appropriate for our district. And we kind of came down to 3, and then of the 3, we've chosen Second Step, which is early learning, so pre-K up through grade 8 curriculum, and we'll be hopefully implementing that next year. And of course, we're waiting for the grant, because the grant's going to help us really get that off the ground. The social emotional learning plan, this again comes from the guidelines on implementing social emotional learning through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. It has 6 overarching actions, and I'm going to show you what those are in a minute. But in terms of where we are with our social emotional learning plan, developing a vision, we completed that. Conducting an SEL-related resources and needs assessment, we have also completed that. Design and implement effective professional learning, that's making progress in terms of how we're building our internal capacity. Adopting and implementing evidence-based programs, that's making progress, again contingent on how we can fund that and get that off the ground. Integrating SEL at all 3 levels of school functioning, curriculum instruction, school-wide practice and policies, family and community, we're making progress. And establishing processes to continually improve academic, social, emotional through inquiry and data collection, and we're making progress there. Making progress means this is what we are working on in our SEL committee. So one of the things that we were fortunate, or are fortunate to be part of, is the Excel Network, which is the Excellence Through Social Emotional Learning. We were one of 9 districts in the state that was chosen to participate on this networking group. It's facilitated by 3 amazing organizations, Rennie Center, Teachers 21, and Transforming Education, who are all leaders in the social emotional learning realm. And we have, our goal is to have, by the end of this year, is an implementation plan of our social emotional learning, with a heavy emphasis on growth mindset and positive school culture. We have an awesome team. We have Dr. Blanchard, Nicole Camp, one of our school psychologists, Mary Aldak, the assistant principal at HES, Kristen Hayden, the adjustment counselor at the middle school, Robin Titus, a psychologist at the high school, and myself. We meet and we work on projects that they've assigned to us. They consult with us over the phone, and then every other month we go to Holy Cross to be together with the other 8 school districts to network and build our own capacity. And just quick, and I throw this up here because this is again, a word. It might be a word, but it's something that we want to really start using in terms of language. We want to be consistent in the language we're using and in the understanding of what we're expecting through social emotional learning. And the 2 pieces that are really important to understand is that we want to be in the growth mindset. We want to understand that intelligence can be developed, that we're looking for students who are trying, who put effort into it, not so much that it's automatic that a student is smart. So we want kids to believe that they can learn and they can develop and they can grow, and they can put effort into it, and their effort's going to pay off. So one of the things we came up with, this is very lengthy and I'm not going to read it because you have it, but we came up with what's called an AIM statement, or another word for it is a SMART goal. Through our Excel networking project, we were required to come up with this statement, and we feel that it grasps both the student level and the school level in terms of what we're wanting for students to grow in terms of their social emotional learning. The needs assessment we did this in the past couple of months. We provided to all staff. And what we looked at the needs assessment, this is something that the Excel network and the consultants helped us with and provided us with a framework for the assessment. But we looked at the 3 areas: leaders being actively involved in prioritizing SEL, that everyone contributes to SEL, meaning the community, parents, students, teachers, everyone, and that SEL is tailored to the local context. And there were a variety of questions under each of these areas. But the 3 pieces that I thought were really, really interesting and I think is a really feel good is that the questions where we asked staff, do you have a vision for SEL integration? That number is yes, bigger than no, and I like that because people are thinking about it, which means we're having an impact on teachers as well in understanding that we need to have a social emotional learning culture. And I'm going to emphasize that social emotional learning is not a curriculum, it's the way we think, and it's what we do. And so people, the teachers responding to this, I feel good in terms of their responses. Are you knowledgeable about growth mindset? So we have a good portion of our teachers who did say they are familiar with the growth mindset, but wanted to also learn more about it. And then the final question is, do any of your school administrators, teachers, community members, parents demonstrate a positive climate or strong SEL focus? And that was a very positive response. I was very pleased to see that number. And then looking at our current practices, we have what's called the District Curriculum Accommodation Plan, or the DCAP. That is a document that every teacher has, and it's an accommodation that any student can access. In other words, we should be accommodating unique learning needs in our classrooms, and this document helps teachers to recognize that there are things that we can do. It's not special education, that we are all unique learners and have different ways that we approach our learning. So the DCAP is in place, and all the teachers have it. We have the PBIS, Positive Behavior Intervention Supports, in our elementary schools that is going strong. We have Shark Citizen at the middle school. We have JOSM at the high school. The You Are Important at the high school. We have the Echo Dots being used, and I'm excited I'll share a little bit about what that looks like in a minute. We have the ESPERT, which is a screening, brief intervention, and referral to treatment. This is really on that, the alcohol and drug usage, and that's a screening that 2 years ago there was a bill that came into place that required schools to provide this screening and to make sure that parents are aware of what that is and referrals that might need to be made on the outside. We'll be doing the anti-addiction curriculum, which is the BOTFIN Life Skills. We have an 8-part series for parents that's already scheduled this year. We're providing mental health first aid to our parents and to our educators. We have Gosnell Counseling within our schools. We have Howard Youth Services. We have Project Adventure, Save a Life Tour. I don't know if you noticed walking in the high school to the left, there's an actual Save a Life Tour certificate where students signed kind of this agreement, and it's actually up on the wall, so if you walk out, you can look on the way out. We have MARC, which is the Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center, which is our anti-bullying and curriculum that's implemented. We work with the District Attorney's Office with the Keep Them Coming program, and that's to support families who are struggling to have their child attend on a regular basis, so we work closely with them. And finally, Children's Cove Partnership. So I want to talk a little bit about mindfulness and Alexa. Alexa is the Amazon Echo Dot. But first, I want to share with you the high school, Steve Cass, unbelievable. There are 8 clips. I'm going to show you one clip that they're going to show during finals. No, we're not in finals yet. What do you call them? Midterms for students that they'll be casted on the TVs. So I want to show you an example of what our students are doing as well.
As you breathe in, breathe out. Let your entire body relax. Feel relaxation flowing from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet. Feel all tension leaving your body with the tips of your fingers and the tips of your toes. Breathe in peace and breathe out tension. Open our eyes, feeling calm.
So they're called Stress Busters, and so the students have recorded these. There's 8 of them, and they're going to, as I said, they're going to play these. So they're really into this, which thrills me to no end. The other thing we're doing is, if you've ever seen the Echo Dot by Alexa through Amazon, so one of the things, and I've had one for a while, and one of the things I started looking at is all the different, they're called skills, they're not called apps, but the skills that I was looking at is all these mindfulness and exercise and breathing and just wonderful skills that you can just ask her to play, and she will do it. So we are up to 62 dots we have distributed to teachers who are using them in their classroom. And here's a couple of quotes from some of the teachers. One teacher said, her class sat for 45 minutes as she was using the Alexa for some deep breathing and for some relaxation techniques. Some teachers are using it in a variety of ways here, but one of the ones I liked here is, this teacher uses to play break songs and to play the transition song that she was able to put on the Alexa. And then when she does her calendar, she uses a skill called Pick a Number skill. So it can be used for many things. As a matter of fact, Liz Hoff came to me and said, I wonder if it has any Spanish skills. And we looked, and it's got Spanish word of the day, so kids can engage. Originally, it was meant for social emotional learning, and which they're all using it for. So I'm really looking forward to the videos coming back in for how the kids are responding to that. Liz Hassa also said that kids are getting right back to work. At the minute they're playing a mindfulness or a breathing or a meditation, the kids are getting right into work, and that's what we wanted. And again, we wanted to say it's not one thing. It's our way of providing those tools to kids and teachers. Not all teachers might be ready to stand up and say, okay, we're going to do a 1-minute breathing exercise. So this takes that pressure off the teacher and gives it a fun tool to use for them for mindfulness. The other thing that I met with a teacher today, with Diana, and I believe last year there was a presentation about the playback theater. And one of the things that her goal is to really integrate the social emotional learning through the playback theater. And one of the things that I loved, and something else I'm going to show you, is the 7th grade reflection on the work. Oh no, that's not right. I guess I'm not gonna show you that. Oh, I'm sorry. That's it. Apparently in my drive, and I'm in Jim's drive, so I can't show it to you. Well, what was really nice is what she incorporated was the students wrote the reflections about being at the playback theater, and so not only did they write the reflection, but they created a video and other students who observed the students actually read the reflection. So it was kind of neat. So a lot of students were not only able to use their own voice, but other students were recognizing the work of their peers. So this was really cool. I apologize, I can't show you the video. That's disappointing. And then, of course, we continue to have a variety of practices in the elementary, middle, and high school programs that are working on integrating social emotional learning. So I'm not going to read all of them. I just want you to see how many there are up there. And then our plans for the next school year. NAMI, which is the National Alliance for Mental Illness, has a grant for Dr. Stuart Albron from Mass General Hospital through Think Kids, which is collaborative problem solving. So there were 15 of us who went to the all-day training with Barnstable, and we will then move on to an additional 2.5-day training to be coaches. Since then, 3 additional staff were so motivated and excited about this. They did the online training so they could also be coaches. So we will have 18 coaches for the district, and then next year on October 5th, I believe, whatever the All Cape date is, every staff member in Monomoy will have that training all day with Dr. Albron. It's a wonderful, wonderful tool that all of our teachers will have, and it really focuses on understanding the child and that understanding that children don't misbehave because they want to. It's because something has happened, and that we need to understand what has happened so that we can support them and that they can be better ready for their learning. We're looking to implement the Botfin Life Skills curriculum and then the second step curriculum. So our next steps is certainly our continued participation in the Excel network over the next 2 years, continue to develop our social emotional learning plan, continue to identify staff who are interested in being trained in the Botfin Life Skills program, and an implementation plan for our second step curriculum. And then, of course, to continue to develop our strategy, supports, and services to address social emotional learning and to strengthen our community partnerships. And I'm done. I'll take questions.
Any questions for Mrs. McGuire? Ms. Richardson?
I just have a comment. This is so current, and both in both in the content as well as the way of providing that content. It's exciting, I think.
Thank you, it is exciting.
Can hear your excitement. Ms. Stout?
And I just want to say that although I've wanted all this done yesterday on the curriculum, I think the thoughtful way and the expansive way into some of these other things like the Echo Dot that's coming into a lot of classrooms, it is really bringing something to our school that we've never had and that very few, if I don't know of any of the schools that are at this point with these things that are so necessary.
Any, Mr. Russell?
I have two, Melissa. The motivational at peace moments in class, how are the kids view? Is it on their phones or on this here that we have?
It's on the screens. For the ones that the kids are doing,
Yes.
they're on all the screens.
Beyond the beyond, isn't it?
It's phenomenal.
Yeah. Next question, which is for the next year or so. Terrific experiences in stuff that's obviously very needed throughout K-12. Right now, where would you see the teaching vehicle to begin to implement this within the K-12 classrooms? In the wellness classes, phys ed / health?
So what we're really looking at is how do we take, especially the Botman and the second step, and how do we take that and integrate that as part of our instruction across the content area? Because we feel that that's the most effective way to deliver it, so that we're using that as not a separate and distinct, necessarily, we're going to do this lesson, but we're going to use it as part of other lessons that are being taught across the content. So that's the point of having trainers of teachers to really look at how do we integrate that, or when do we deliver that instruction. So we want it to be not just one person doing it, we want many teachers being able to deliver that instruction.
Thanks, good job.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very
Thank
much. All right, and next on our agenda is an FY18 year-to-date update with Ms. Isernio.
I think we should have Melissa McGuire just keep on going. What do you think? Year-to-date, Katie Isernio, Business Manager. I'm going to provide you with year-to-date as of the end of the second quarter of FY18, December 31st numbers. The revenues are right on task, right on target. We've collected 42.6% of our revenues, and as we know, we're using $371,326 of B&D to support the budget. So everything is on target in terms of what we're expecting and what we are receiving for revenues. You'll see that there hasn't been any monies deposited in the regular day transportation. We get that money at the very end of December or into January, and then the second payment in March. So that's expected that we don't see that dollar amount, so not to be alarmed. I thought I would start with the summary, because I wasn't sure how long, because we have the 19 budget to talk about as well. The FY18 budget is positive, where we are at the end of this second quarter. Half the year is gone, if you can believe it. We're right where we were last year at this time, and we have an unencumbered balance of just over $1.3 million, which is to be expected. As I indicated, there are certain items we don't encumber throughout the year, or 3.66% of the budget is unencumbered and unexpended at this time. Whoops. This is part of your eye exam, so you can see what row you can, what row you can read. It's hard to get the information all on one page, and the font is bad, but this is just all the detail that's behind all of this information that was in your packets that just indicates all the different lines with the 1.39 unexpended balance. And this is the breakdown of where we are in the budget. 53.3% of salaries, 13.4 expenses. Expenses, non-fixed charges, those are our expenses for supplies and operational. Fixed charges are 18.5% of the budget. Capital debt and then the programs with others to show where we are and where we're expended to date. I included the narrative. Pretty much every single cost center indicates that we're right on task and where we should be. And the only one that we need to be keeping an eye on are the tuition lines for our charter school and our school choice tuitions out, that we get some firm numbers in February that will have some better sense of where those will trend for the rest of the year. So I don't know if anybody, had any questions on that. We're right where we want to be.
Any questions?
And in your package, you have the line detail with all of that too.
No questions? Well done. Thank you
That's because we were listening to that nice
for breathing.
winter scene.
All right, and we will move on to a legal counsel special education. And it was requested of the school committee to look at our legal counsel for special education. So we met on, I met every day this week, so help me remember what day that was.
Monday?
Monday, we met Monday. Oh, I did skip over that.
It's okay, keep going.
We'll go through this one and we'll come back. That's an omen that we don't want to move on to our hiring of our director of curriculum. We're just gonna keep the one we have. So anyways, we met Monday for our legal counsel special education, where we had Miss Florian, Alicia Florian, came down from Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lehane. And we had, I think 5 of us were there to interview and listen to her conversation. And I think most of us were very pleased with what we heard. And so if there is anybody have any questions on that meeting? No? Then possibly, anything else I need to say?
Just, I just wanted to share the,
Oh, relationship.
the insights, the insights that I shared with the group that was there. Attorney St. Florian has had a long-term working relationship with Melissa McGuire, who is our current Director of Student Services, and I think the district would be well-served maintaining that relationship. And I think that that connection between the two of them really came out in the conversation we had. It was as if they were finishing each other's sentences.
I believe they did finish each other's sentences on many occasions.
I think the special ed council at the district has used in past years is a quality lawyer, but I just want to be sensitive to relationships, and that we have somebody who is new to our administrative team, who has a connection with an attorney who she has been very successful with in her previous district, and I think we'd be well served with maintaining that relationship here.
So if anybody would care to make a motion to accept that relationship for us to bring to the district.
So moved.
Maybe a little bit more specific than or do you want me to spell out and then you can so move me? Would you care to make a motion to appoint a legal counsel for special education to Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and LaHaye
That's
with
the name.
Ms. Florian?
Yes.
Say so moved?
So moved.
I would second that.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? Ms. Stout abstains. So it's unanimous with 1 abstention. Thank you. And now we'll go back to the conversation that we don't want to have, which is why I skipped over it consciously, is the administrative hiring with the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment job description updates. So we are not creating a job, we are just updating it a little bit.
Well,
Mr. Carpenter.
I guess there's actually a few positions just that I want to touch base with. The only one that really has an action item for the committee is the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, but we posted in the Boston Globe this past week an advertisement for Dr. Blanchard's position as the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, but also posting that same ad for Sam Hine, who will be retiring as the Harwich Elementary principal. So we have those two retirements that we have put out there that we're hiring for. I think the plan is to hire, the way we sort of staggered the closing dates, to hire for the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment first, and have ideally that person identified and at least identified by the time we head into February vacation, and then on the tails of February vacation, start the process for or start the sort of screening and interviewing for the Harwich Elementary principals. So those two are out there. What we did need to do that really kind of falls in the committee's bailiwick is when the district was coming together, Dr. Blanchard's role was a Harwich Public Schools employee that melded with essentially a director of student services from Chatham Public Schools, and that's how we got to those two administrative positions. So there's a job description in your packet that says Harwich Public Schools, Harwich Public Schools Director of Curriculum Assessment and Instruction. That is largely the job that Dr. Blanchard does today. In your packet are three little things that the position also has started to do since the district has come together. Those being on bullet number 4, the addition of add oversight to the district's new teacher induction program and coordination of mentors and orientation for new teachers. You know, that was something that has been added into the contract and induction program, so that is something that Dr. Blanchard does. We also looked at having a coordination of the district's ELL services, the English Language Learner Services, should fall under hers. That's bullet, or now number 13 that's been added onto this, because that's a curriculum piece. And then the last thing, in Massachusetts, families that decide to homeschool have their homeschooling plan submitted to the school district. There's somebody who needs to be identified in the school district to look at the curriculum plan and under the law to meet with the families and provide, answer questions and provide them feedback. So given that that is a curriculum function, it makes sense to have that be added to this. So there are those 3 additions to the job description. Other than that, I think the only thing in the one that was printed out for you, I'd suggest where it says job goal, I would just suggest after principals, we put a period there, that it would just say to provide K-12 leadership in the ongoing development, implementation, and improvement of curriculum instruction and programs in coordination with the school principals, period. And then the rest of the job description is pretty much the same as Harwich's with those 3 additional additions.
Ms. Richardson?
I was wondering if there is a rubric or specific tool to be used in the assessment of applicants?
We haven't done come up with one yet, so we'll pull together the hiring committee in the next couple weeks. So the job applications are we still have people submitting applications through the end of this month, but we'll pull together a hiring committee, and I am actually excited. Tom Johnson, one of our community members who has a long history of being in school HR, I've reached out to Tom, and I think he's going to. I've invited him to be part of that as a community representative, but we'll go have a representative group that will work on coming up with the tool that we will use to screen the applicants. At the moment, I think there's about 7 applicants online in School Spring, and the nature of School Spring, it's electronic, so so people just keep hitting. There are administrators looking for jobs that kind of hit send, so usually there's a much smaller number that really makes sense for the committee to interview and then come up with screening or the questions that we'd ask each interviewee.
Ms. Stout?
A little aside to this, but on the process. When we were doing the hiring for Melissa's job, the applicants came in before February vacation, and then we had basically during February vacation to call and find out about them. That was totally ineffective because the people we would be calling were all on vacation. So if it could be that all the calling for references and things like that be done after February vacation's over or before it starts, it would be really helpful.
Any other questions for Mr. Carpenter? I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the updated Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment job description. Anybody care to make said motion?
I have one question before that.
Oh, yes, please.
I noticed the Old Howard's job description, item number 11, evaluates, interprets mass comprehensive assessment system. I'm assuming, and that doesn't show up here, which must mean someone else on staff will be picking that up.
No, it is.
This is still number 11.
As I see it's number 11, I was just checking both of you people because I thought that last piece in harmony had you thrown off. It's time for Terry to.
It's not bedtime yet, Terry. It's not bedtime
No, I've
yet.
taken all my meds,
Ms.
so I apologize, Madam Chair.
No apologies.
I object to having something presented at one meeting and not discussing it at the meeting and then voting at it another time. What's happening, we had a practice where we'd be presented something one meeting and vote another meeting. And now we've got field trips that are coming in that we're voting on that are 2 years away or something. And no one thinks it's necessary anymore to get things done, so we discuss, deliberate during the time, maybe discuss again and vote on it. Because we make so many exceptions that there now becomes no exceptions. So I really think that this and everything else that's not an emergency, and we need to make sure that things, for instance this, that, if the boiler went or something, that's an emergency. But most of these things that come before us aren't emergencies. They just need pre-planning to come to us. So I would recommend that we reflect on this and vote on it next time.
Okay, thank you.
After question 11 was cleared up for Terry, I'm ready to vote, so.
Any further discussion, or would somebody care to make a motion or something to move along, please?
I move that we take this up next time.
Thank you. Is there a second to that? Okay, with no second, would somebody care to make a motion to approve it tonight? Or do we want to table it till our next meeting?
We can move,
Mr.
make a
Craffey.
motion to approve it tonight.
Okay, so Mr. Craffey, are you making a motion to approve the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment job description that has been updated as presented?
Yes.
Thank you. Any second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ms. Stout abstains. It's still unanimous, yes? Yes, thank you. All right, it's pulling teeth tonight.
One
Mr.
more.
Carpenter.
So just also in terms of administrative hiring, I have Ms. Police here tonight So I actually met with Ms. Police and all of the members that were part of the interim athletic director hiring committee to discuss whether or not we should be opening our search for a athletic director. And Ms. Police was part of that conversation, and I'm happy to let her come to the mic if she'd like and share all of the wonderful things that were said about Ms. Gilmette, who has been our interim athletic director, but it was a lot of praise and just a lot of appreciation for a challenging role that she stepped into mid-year with a lot of games not scheduled and uniforms not ordered and this, that, and the other, and was able to pull that together, but has really shown great leadership, and it was the unanimous recommendation from that hiring committee that I appoint Ms. Gilmet to our full-time athletic director. So I have had a conversation with her, and I do believe that she has accepted the position and would like to be here long-term. So congratulations, Karen, and you did a great job, and we are glad to have you here.
Thank you. Congratulations. Oh, are you done now?
That would be it.
All right, so then we will move on to our regional agreement, and we are coming to the end of our regional agreement discussions for now. You were emailed earlier today a copy of the draft, or the red line version, it's not a draft, with a couple of options under, so the main changes that were put into this one as opposed to previous copies is that at the bottom of page 4, under section 5, location and ownership of schools, part C, it puts in a couple of different options to choose from that we talked about in the past in terms of changing the configuration of the elementary schools and the attendance of those, or the students attending those schools. And option A, so maybe I should probably read it. There shall be no less than one elementary school in each member town, except in special cases as defined by the Regional School District Committee. Students in elementary grades shall attend schools in their towns of residence unless, and this is where we have to decide which direction we would like to go. Option A, the school committee by a 2/3 vote votes to assign students on a basis other than their town of residence. Option B, the school committee votes to assign students on a basis other than a town of residence, and each town's boards of selectmen by majority vote approves the school committee's vote. Or option C, the school committee votes to assign students on a basis other than their town of residence, and each town's town meeting by majority vote approves the school committee vote. So there are 3 ways to go about basically reassigning elementary age students to a different elementary school, however we see fit. I had a chance to meet with one of the chairs of the Board of Selectmen, and there was a little confusion as to the meeting time, so I never got to meet with the other one or speak with him on the phone, unfortunately. And the one chair mentioned that he would really like to see the direction of option C. He feels that it would be really, I'm not sure, helpful, beneficial for us to still go through town meeting to make any changes to the elementary schools. A lot of conversation we had with Mr. Carpenter this morning was that in leaving the regional agreement as it is with no change in that particular section, it would require a longer time span of making a change. So we would, if we take this regional agreement as is and remove any changes from that part C, it would still have to have a regional agreement change at a town meeting, which would require steps, and then it would have to have approval from the DESE, which would take time, and then any changes, or however those changes are decided to be made in the regional agreement, that step would have to be taken as well. So we're looking to make some sort of change to have a change to the regional agreement so that there is an option to change the population of the elementary schools. So we kind of need to have a feeling as to which option we would like to go to. We are not deciding specifically and voting on the regional agreement tonight to put it forward to the boards of selectmen. And we would like to have some thought so that we can have a draft, a clean draft, not a red line version, but a clean draft at our next meeting to actually vote on. So I'd like to open up, and the other part that was added in was at the top of page 9, under debt service. And this would kind of go along with any changes with the elementary school. It says debt service costs attributable to the district's elementary schools will be assessed to the member town that owns the building, provided that if the regional district school committee reconfigures its elementary schools such that students are no longer assigned based on their town of residence, ergo, students are assigned based on redistricting. The district creates an upper or lower elementary school. Debt service costs shall be assessed upon the mechanism described in paragraph E below, which utilizes the most recent 3 years enrollment figures. So basically, that's just allowing that right now, we would have the debt service would be Chatham pays for Chatham Elementary, Harwich pays for Harwich Elementary, unless there is a change in the future. And if there's no change in the future, then it just remains that way. So those are the two additional sections that were talked about with the attorney. Mr. Duvall, you had your hand up earlier.
I do not necessarily disagree with that option C. Only because we need to do what the towns want. But
No, but,
I think we need to have a mechanism, as in within the budgets, that if one town says no to the budget, one town says yes to the budget, well, it goes eventually to a joint town meeting for a vote.
Oh, that's
I
interesting.
mean, because if there is one town that just adamantly says, if there's one town where the people that show up at the meeting say no, but the people that don't show up at the meeting really kind of feel yes, then we need a mechanism that we can't, that it doesn't die right there.
Okay, Mr. Russell.
Probably for the TV audience and even for ourselves, I'd like to set the context of this. This targets a potential need directed at our two elementary schools, one in Harwich and one in Chatham. If we look towards the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, where student numbers, demographics of the students in those two towns, begins to show somewhat a decrease or a dramatic decrease. For example, Chatham Elementary, and I'm not talking in favor or disfavor about a small elementary school. I would favor that. I'm talking about class sizes within school. If all of a sudden, specifically Chatham goes from 4 sections or 3 sections of kindergarten, first grade, third grade, fourth grade, to 2 sections, and the twin sister school, Harwich Elementary, has X number of sections, and add to that the fact that it's almost at the maximum capacity of that school right now, I would think it's, number one, wise for this school committee to make a decision as to, if that trend continued, they'd be able to act practically, as well as somewhat in a calm haste, meaning within a year or 2, rather than to wait for 2 years of having this process, and thus discover that, in fact, those 2 sections in Chatham, for example, we see that it's going to be 1 section. And we see that some of the classes are at around 12 or 13. Now, we don't need to get into the critical mass of a class and how important it is to have a balance. Right now, I think 15 to 18 to 20 youngsters in the school system is a fabulous number from where I came from. So I'm in favor of having this decision being made. I think we have debated and explored this for at least a year on our board. I did a little research on my computer, which very little, and I found out that all of the Commonwealth schools that are under the authority of the Department of Ed, the school committees have the authority to make this decision as a political body, not with a town meeting, not with selectmen. So actually, that's a given. That's something that is the way it is. However, in the light of the fact that we have been in existence for 4 or 5 years, in the light of the fact that the harmony and the workings of the way we're trying to create this district, I myself would prefer that we make a decision as a committee and pass it on, that option 2, would be the most reasonable, practical, and also, somewhat of a representative democracy. That the selectmen in both towns represent the hundreds and hundreds of voters every third year or second year that they stand for election, as we do. So combining that with the suggestion here that we vote on a 2/3 majority, even that's more than a majority, that in fact something would have to be done in 2 years from now, 4 years, or never. But at least within the framework of this agreement, after 5 years, we should have something saying that we should be able to begin to look at the decision to pull a trigger to say, we feel based on our study that it should be this. And then move that to our selectmen within a period of time where both towns' selectmen would either agree or disagree with us. Everyone in those bodies are answerable to the voters. I just would be concerned that a large town meeting majority would have a very, very difficult time without years and years of education of what the issue is. To all of us and not have a freewheeling debate, that it would be discouraging to say the least. So I would favor, by law, all school committees have the right unto themselves. However, I would favor option 2.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Ms. Stowe?
Chatham Elementary has never been more than 3 for classes. I'm going there. And it's never been less than 2. If it went to 1, I would agree that there was something amiss. I feel like we are very new as Monomoy. We might not feel it because we go to all these meetings all the time, and the students don't feel it. But as far as the towns go, it's very new. I would be for a decision if it was more than 2/3 of the school committee, and of course, it's not in here, but it has to be, with at least 1 member from each town voting.
Yeah, that's our normal voting protocol.
Right, but that's not in here. And
It doesn't have to be because that's our, in order to approve anything, you have to have a member from each town.
okay.
So that's,
And then I think it should be that the school committee, and then the selectmen, and then the town has to approve this.
so that would be option C.
Okay, does it say selectmen there?
So that conversation came up this morning with the one chair we met with Mr. Metters. He said, because we went back and forth as to whether or not to include the Board of Selectmen in there, and his opinion was that the selectmen have to agree to put something on the warrant. So they're putting it on the warrant, and then they would give their recommendation vote in the warrant, as is their practice.
And
So
would
it goes through the selectmen.
Okay. What I'm saying,
That
would
way.
each selectman be on record of which way they vote?
If they want to be, in
Because-
terms of their recommendations are on there, yeah. And then they would vote as a town meeting member. So that, I mean, I'm not saying it has to be this way, I'm just saying that that was a conversation we had this morning. Because I asked specifically, do you think we should include the Board of Selectmen in that option C? So,
I just don't want anyone that's an appointed person on the school committee or on the selectmen to not have to face the voters with the good deliberation of this. And I know that some people have a hard time with that.
So if it's option C, none of us have to face the
DeVault.
voters because it's their vote.
Well, I'd like it to be all of our votes in that procedure. Us, then the selectmen, and then the school, and then the town.
Mr. Russell?
As a follow-up, as really a guarantor, as a governor of our votes regarding one or more of the 2 elementary school issues, and this is a critical one. And it, again, I repeat, it may never happen. And again, just a corrective, Sharon, I have no concern over 2 sections. What I'm concerned about is this classroom population of children. That, to me, is the most vital thing for the parents, for the kids, and for the 250 teachers and teaching assistants. So as I've said earlier, if I have a colleague over at Howard Elementary School in grade 3 having 20 youngsters teaching 3rd grade, and that colleague teaching having the same salary paid by, in this case, the Howard's voters at 76 cents on the dollar, has 12 children, I see that as grossly out of whack. So, that being said, on page 3 of the region, G, any action voted by the Regional District School Committee which directly and specifically affects the elementary school or schools in only one town will require that 3 of the 4 members of the Regional District Committee from that town, which is affected, located, a vote in support of that action. I don't know how much more you would need to have logic carry the day. So if the one example, which again, it may never happen, if the one example of that Howard Elementary has 10 children in the class and Chatham has 20, this group here, the 3 members out of the town of Howard would have to say, I agree that that needs to be corrected. Who has the empowerment to do that? The school committee does. So,
Any other thoughts, conversations? What shall we put on a draft for our next meeting's vote on January 25th?
Oh, I have another question.
Ms. Stout?
I foresee in the future that we're going to determine that our elementary schools are obsolete, or they don't have good quality air, or something, and will need to be changed. So if a school was built, and of course the taxpayers don't want to hear this, but eventually that will happen. I don't know when eventually will be. But suppose one was built in East Harwich or South Chatham. That would be very unfair to call that, since all the kids would be going to one school in that case.
I'm sorry, I'm not following.
Well, right now, what the proposal is here, if I have it correctly, is that if you, maybe it would cover it. You tell me if it would cover it. If all the kids were going to one school, and it was in one
Elementary
town, and elementary school.
Oh, you're talking,
would-
so in the future, you're saying not having 2 elementary schools, but eventually, if that
Yes.
situation ever comes up long time in the future when we're all long
Maybe.
gone. there-
Maybe. There are problems right now in both of the elementary schools.
You're talking if all students go to one elementary school,
And who's going to be responsible for that
that would be
budget?
based the same as the way the middle school and the high school goes
Yes.
with
Is
foundation
that covered
enrollment.
in here?
Yes.
Okay.
in response, I'll share good thinking on stepping out there, but this page 4 suggestion to either change it or stay the way it is, the first sentence cleans that up. That right now,
Right, that's
each
true.
town will have each elementary school.
There shall be no less than one
So some committee
elementary
would have
school
to
in each
change
town.
that if
Yeah.
it ever came to that.
Good point, Terry.
Building will have to cross town lines.
Yeah.
Straddle,
Half and half.
well, we're sharing in the future septic systems, so maybe right around East Howard, sure. Was that untoward?
All right, so where do we want to go with a final draft? I need somebody to please make some sort of motion or something of that sort to go towards a final draft so that we can vote and so we can therefore put it forth to the selectmen for them.
I would offer the suggestion that I've repeated, that
Motion, maybe?
motion that the committee recommend that the elementary school option would require a 2/3 vote of the Monomoy Regional School Committee and a majority vote of the 2 town selectmen in order to pass. I've missed something there in the,
No, you're pretty, that's.
Which is B.
which would be option B, but
Actually, option B does not include the 2/3 majority, so we could add that in there if you would like. So that's up to you. If you wanted to read the school committee by
I prefer
2/3
majority
vote,
vote myself.
just regular vote or
Yes,
2/3 vote?
I would say majority vote of this committee.
So the school committee votes to assign students on a basis other than town residents, and each town's board of selectmen by majority vote approves the school committee's vote.
Yes,
Is that your motion?
Yes.
To include that option?
yep.
Thank you. Is there a second for
I
that?
second.
The second discussion, questions, Ms. Richardson?
Question or
Yes.
comment. I can live with option A and option B. I feel our school committee is the one to make the decision. I don't have a problem with this being backed up by the Board of Selectmen, but I'm not in favor of a town meeting. I just think this board can be representative of the town.
Thank you. Mr. Duval?
My feeling is that we're talking about a group of students whose parents are really involved. And if you're gonna say that my kindergartner from Chatham is now gonna be shipped to Harwich, and I wanna have a say in that. That's my main reason for saying option C and going to the town meeting. And it's just for voting on the elementary schools. It's not on any of all the other things that we do and all the processes that we put in place. But I think this one in particular is a very personal one. And it's not that I don't disagree with Terry. I mean, I think that we are put in place to do a job, and our job is to make those kind of decisions. Just this one has a lot of gray area.
Ms. Stout?
Having worked on trying to be regionalized for decades, I can't say 60 decades, that would be a little ridiculous, but as far as I can remember, this was, people my age don't remember a time that, if they've lived here a long time, that there wasn't a huge issue about this. So only people that are new to Chatham and Harwich would find this not something that is very upsetting to people. They took 50 years to vote for this regionalization, and then they, in Chatham, it barely passed. It passed by, what, 51%. So the voters are in charge, or the taxpayers are in charge of paying for our schools. I really think that they need to have a say in this. And if they, if people don't turn out, that was their choice. But I do think the voters need to vote on it.
I should also add to the conversation we had this morning is that if you notice, when it says the town meeting, a town's town meeting, it does not say the annual town meeting. So that does leave us open to a special town meeting or the annual town meeting. It just has to be a town meeting vote. And we did verify with their attorney that because that word annual is not in there, it does allow for special town meeting or annual town meeting. I felt I needed to clarify that in there. So we do have a motion and a second to essentially insert option B into that section and everything else as it sits as a final draft. Is there any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? And those abstain?
Oh, wait a minute. B is the one where we don't have the town meeting? I'm opposed.
Option B is the school committee votes and the town's boards of selectmen
I'm
votes.
against that.
Okay, so let's do this again, please. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? I'm in favor of the selectmen, so you have, I have to count, halves. 1, 2, 3, 4 to 1.5. Okay, so our final draft that we'll bring is this with option B in it, and that will be what we vote on to bring forward to the selectmen at our next meeting. Did I follow that? Okay. Thank you. Be happy when that's done. And then we move on to FY19 budget, Ms. Isernio. It's gonna be as brief as your FY18 update, right?
I remain Katie Isernio, business manager.
This doesn't look as brief as your other one that said
No, it's not. And Mr. Carpenter and I will be jointly presenting this. What I would like to do, though, is I'm going to jump to the very end.
skip to the end.
All right. Spirit of time, no.
And then we'll adjourn the meeting.
Well, that's not the very end. Oh, you are going, I thought you went backwards, sorry.
Yeah, okay. So one of the things I want to point out is that this is the beginning of discussions about the budget. So I thought it was important to just go through the timeline of, at the last meeting, we talked about what took place already with the principals and the athletic director and et cetera, and the administrators. So now this is where going forward, so I want to just reiterate that this is the first night of discussion, with several more to come. So tonight is January 11th, that we're having a budget discussion of the draft budget, and I always say this is draft with a capital D. As time progresses, we'll get more solid numbers with what the health insurance increases are going to be, and other numbers along that line. We'll be opening up our transportation bids at the end of the month, et cetera. We'll also then be discussing this at our next school committee on the 25th. And I just need to step back. Per the regional agreement, we need to send a draft budget to the 2 town halls and the 2 town libraries by January 15th. So we'll be delivering those tomorrow. So in your packets is the draft budget that will be distributed to the 2 town libraries and 2 town halls. And again, it's draft all over it.
Will we post it online as well?
And we'll
Yeah.
post it online as well. After, I was going to speak with Joy today about posting that. I figured after tonight's meeting we could do that. So then, true to form, we have in the past gone and we've presented to the Board of Selectmen and the finance subcommittees in both towns, typically at the very, very end of January. And then we'll hold a public hearing about the budget in February, and then we'll be taking a vote on the budget in March. So tonight's round, I don't know, 3 maybe of several rounds. So I just wanted to kind of lay out all that takes place before the budget actually gets voted on.
Katie, do you have copies of that for us, the timeline?
We got it in the few.
Last
in the
page?
past.
Oh. This?
Yes, that's the schedule right there. Okay, so now we'll rewind and start at the beginning.
So, you want to drive and I'll speak?
Be happy to.
It's like Charlie McCarthy over here.
Slow in the driveway on Sundays?
So I think what I'll do is spare the committee going through each of the slides in depth, knowing full well that on the timeline that Katie was just talking about, February 8th, we have a budget hearing that we have to do, and that we'll do the whole enchilada at that time, and there'll be even a little more fiscal certainty by the 8th, so I'll sort of skim through this. So, so the first couple slides of the presentation talk about state aid. State aid represents 8% of the funding that comes into the school district, and you always kind of look at, include state aid because it's part of your assumptions. The assumption that we have is that the state aid trend, which is that orange line, is going to continue the way it has for the last 5 fiscal years, but we have no guarantee that that's going to be the case until we actually get the numbers from Beacon Hill. So what we do is we conservatively project that state aid is going to be where it was in FY18, and if it is more, that will help reduce the assessments to the 2 towns ultimately. So if we jump to slide 6. So just the budget, so the budget guidelines, one of the things that's important here is that we are developing a budget that supports the schools, the school district's mission and our strategic objectives, and we'll kind of get, as we move forward here, where we are trying to focus on those strategic objectives with some of the some of the things that the budget's doing as we develop the FY19. One of the things that we have always strived to do is to keep our class sizes very reasonable within the district. So at the elementary level, to try to have those class sizes average 18 plus or minus 1, and at the middle and high school to have those class sizes average 19 plus or minus 2. So this budget maintains that type class size as we go forward. And then the other thing that's really important is that we are putting forth a budget to our two towns that's within their fiscal wherewithal. So Katie and I have spent a lot of time talking to the town managers and town finance directors behind the scenes, just to make sure that, you know, what we're putting in this packet in front of you is something that we know our two towns would be able to go and support. In terms of the budget assumptions, the projection here is that we're going to have level enrollment, that this is a level staffed budget, that the state aid is going to be the same, that we, when calculating the assessments, use the minimum required contributions that are posted by the state. A huge piece here is what we anticipate health insurance to be. As we started developing this budget, we were told that health insurance could go up 15% for active employees. So we're carrying that 15% in here. We'll know by the end of this month if it is going to come in a little bit less than that. Health insurance for retirees that we're carrying at 10%. The way the towns get assessed is based on a 3-year rolling average of enrollment. So the enrollment has shifted just slightly towards Chatham by less than a percentage point. So we have that, and we have maintained in the last couple of years a $100,000 contribution towards OPEB. OPEB stands for the Outstanding Post-Employment Benefits, which, you know, would help stabilize our long-term insurance costs out there for the current employees when they retire. In terms of slide 9, our current district enrollment is 65% Harwich, 23% Chatham, and 13% Choice. And if we go to the next couple slides, you know, so the relative Harwich, Chatham, Choice is going to be, we anticipate it's going to look very much like FY17 and FY18, very stable. One of the reasons for that, if we get to slide 11, is the strategy that we've had over the last several years is to try to make sure that we're not taking in too many choice students. And this is something that I kind of shared as we were first coming together as a district. If we continue to take in choice students the way our predecessor districts did, we would have this high school over-enrolled. And to not over-enroll the high school, we've been very judicious about how many students that we're bringing in. So we welcome choice students, but you'll notice that foundation enrollment, which is the number of school-aged children that live in Harwich and Chatham, has been really overlapping with the district enrollment. So for every child that goes out and the free seat that they leave behind, we open that seat to a choice family, but we're really bringing in the school district is at a size that really reflects the size of the student population that we have in our two towns. So we're really just only bringing in choice students to fill the seats that we have in our schools. So the foundation enrollment, which is on slide 12, you'll notice that it's ticking. It's been relatively stable for both towns, but there's a slight depression in that foundation enrollment for Chatham the last couple of years. And while we've talked about that the enrollment is based on a 3-year rolling average. So you'll notice that as we went from 16 to 17, there was a slight upward slant there for Chatham. So that's why in that 3-year rolling average, things have shifted towards Chatham. we can anticipate as we look into the out fiscal years that is going to shift just a fraction of a percent towards Harwich in the upcoming years. If we jump down to slide 14, as I said, the class sizes are based on that 18 plus or minus 1. We still have some of the bubble of large classes that's still rolling through through Harwich Elementary School. And one of the challenges we have at Harwich Elementary is we have one classroom less than having enough classrooms to have 6 classrooms at each grade level without displacing other programs. So that's why we see at 4th grade that 20.5, but we still over all the grades stay within that 18 plus or minus 1. Chatham Elementary is running just a little bit less, kind of getting back to long-term concerns that Terry was raising. So the average class size at Chatham Elementary is going to be about 16.4 students. Average class size at Harwich Elementary is going to be 18.1, and I would anticipate that we're going to see that that difference hold. I don't anticipate that Chatham's going to get beyond 2 students per class, less than Harwich Elementary. Although you will see, just by chance, 3rd grade at Chatham Elementary's 3 less, but it's going to be relatively close there. At the middle school, we currently have a bumper crop at 5th grade. That 5th grade bumper crop of students is going to be rolling up into 6th grade next year, so we anticipate those 6th grade sections being at most in the low 20s. I think after the kids actually get distributed into different specials, I think that'll come down just a little bit in terms of what the actual class sizes are in a typical math, history, or English class, but that would be sort of what we anticipate being a maximum in a academic classroom setting. And at the high school, the 8th grade, we're looking at about 17.5, and then class sizes in 8 through 12, depending on the subject area, somewhere between 16 to 18. As we said, it's a level staffed budget. We have a middle school teacher in 5th grade and a 1st grade teacher at Chatham Elementary that we anticipate having those FTEs redistributed to meet some of the other strategic priorities that we have in the budget. We'll kind of talk about in some later slides. We jump to excess and deficiency. The school district can have an excess and deficiency account of up to 5% of the budget. We have been lucky in that we had sort of a long-range plan of getting our excess and deficiency over our first 7 years up to 4%, and in our first 5 years we've actually got it up to 5%. So it gives us a little bit of a buffer there that we'll talk about later in terms of how we're using excess and deficiency to support the budget. And this is one of those spots that you'll notice that we are using $864,000 of excess and deficiency to help offset this FY19 budget, to bring it in at the percentages that we'll talk about when we get to the last slides in the presentation. In terms of school choice, the money that's coming in, we plan on expending going out. So, so it's just so we're kind of an even number of kids coming in, even number of kids going out, and that budget, that is going to be sort of balanced out. With circuit breaker, same thing. Using, we'll still have a balance within the circuit breaker, but anticipate that what's going in is going to be what's coming out of the circuit breaker. The tuitions, part of Melissa's presentation was out-of-district tuitions there were out-of-district tuitions in her presentation. But we also have school choice tuitions and charter school tuitions. And this is one of those areas in the budget that ideally we want to see as many, particularly the charter school tuitions, stay with us in district. So the more we can improve and maintain our educational program, ideally more of those tuitions are sticking with us in district. So those tuitions take with them the full per pupil expenditure. School choice tuitions, when a student choices out, take with them basically $5,000 with them. So, so for each student that leaves for a charter school, there's 3 times the tuition dollars that are flowing out with them. So, we did a 5-year projection for our towns and just tracking how close our projection was looking 5 years out. What we were projecting FY19 to be and what we are proposing in this budget is it's almost a $40 million budget, and we're within $400,000 of that $40 million. So I think that that 5-year projection's held fairly well over the last years. In terms of budget drivers and things that we want to see happen in this budget, the big thing is the contractual or contractually obligated drivers. So these are 96% of the fiscal increases in this budget are in this category, that there's not a blessed thing we can really do about them. We know that we're anticipating a transportation increase. We have our staff have steps that are contractually specified. There's the health insurance increase. That's just the active employees, $620,000 for that one line. Slight increase in dental insurance, increase with insurance and in the retirement system. But the big lines there are, if you look at the health insurance increases and just the employees that we have that are moving up a step. So I want to emphasize here, this isn't talking about a cost of living increase for the teachers. This is just a contractually a step increase that it's costing the district here. In terms of where we want to go in terms of our strategic initiatives, we want to go look at enhancing the tech ed program here at the high school to really transform it from what was more of a traditional woodshop approach to bring in more of a robotics focus to it. It's going to take $19,000 in materials to have that happen. We've talked in our presentations on the strategic plan about needing to focus on elementary curriculum and ELA. So $23,000 for the first year of a 3-year rollout of a Words Their Way elementary curriculum. Melissa talked about the social emotional curriculum for the district, so that's $18,000. And then there's some TV studio and STEM needs in the district that would cost another $27,000. So those are all part of this budget. And then we have improvements that we really want to see. We've talked about, and we'll have a report a little bit later on a strategic planning consultant. So we're carrying money in the budget for roughly $43,000 for that. We have talked about putting some money aside for a part-time person to do some community engagement and just a little bit of PR and bringing together community resources into the school districts. $23,000 to support clerical support for the athletic director. I know Karen is stretched to be both at the high school and the middle school, and there's a definite need to have some part-time clerical support there. In the presentation that Melissa gave, she talked about the potential of being able to bring some out-of-district placements back in, if we can bring those placements back in to add a intensive special needs teacher at the high school that would be paid for by tuition dollars coming back in. And then lastly, also in her presentation was some additional support for the middle school for a team chair and an adjustment counselor. So those are all part of this budget as well. So the budget itself comes down to, it is a $39,998,800 budget. It's just under a $40 million budget. So we'll go to the next slide. The capital, there are capital things that we will be addressing within the budget at the elementary schools and at the middle school and high school. One of the key things to at least bring out or point out here is at the high school, we have talked about having the concession stand bathroom facility at the stadium to have those bathrooms be done by professional contractors as opposed to the entire building that's been put up so far has been put up by parent volunteers and a lot of community money. But we feel that the bathroom facilities and what's required to do those bathroom facilities is going to be something that we need to have professionals go and come in and do. There were conversations amongst the Boosters Club that has been supporting a lot of the work on the concession stand on having that come back to the school committee and asking the school committee if the building project could cover the bathrooms. And the conversation I had with the Boosters is that my understanding was that bathrooms and the concession stand was not supposed to be part of the building project, and I felt that it would be better if we actually built it into a budget for the school district and had full transparency that this is what the money was being used for. So we have that. That's sort of the biggest project. Last year, our big summer project was the kitchen facility or the cafeteria facility at Harwich Elementary that we really focused on. This year, the big project would be getting those bathrooms in and really providing something for the whole community at the stadium. And let's see, I think if we can just kind of skip over how it's being used and jump, I think, all the way back to probably budget versus assessment on slide 37. So there's a difference between when we talk about the budget and a budget increase. So the budget's increasing 4.9% over the last fiscal year, but ultimately the assessment is what really matters to the town. How much is the assessment to both towns increasing? So if we see changes in state aid, if that goes up or down, that's going to impact that assessment to the town. But one of the other things that will affect the assessment to the town is how much of the reserves do we use to offset our budget. So if we jump to slide 20, or page, I guess that's 39. So this just sort of walks through the financial calculation of how we go from the budget of $39,998,800 to the assessments, which come on the following page. So if we use and expend for the excess and deficiency, the $864,326 up top, it gets us on the next slide to a assessment for Harwich at 3.99%. Chatham goes up slightly more than that. Remember, that 3-year rolling average ticks towards Chatham just a little bit, so Chatham goes up 4.66%, and that is a 4% or 4.17% increase in the overall assessment for the two towns. If we jump to the next couple slides, what we also tried to do is to really break out an apples and oranges comparison. One of the guiding memos that was sent out in the town of Harwich was to see town departments come in at 2%. And the challenge when we're presenting a school district budget is that our health insurance is part of our bottom line assessment. In the towns, police, fire, DPW go up by 2%, but health insurance is over here. If you pull health insurance out of our budget, our budget, our assessment is going up for Harwich 1.89%. For Chatham, it's going up 2.54%. It's an overall budget or assessment increase for the two towns of a 2.06%. So we're really falling right in that want of having a budget at 2%. If it weren't for what we see as a pretty significant health insurance increase. So that's sort of the bottom line of this. So I'll leave it for questions, and it's a lot to mull and digest.
You want to go do that too, or?
Oh, yes, and then just the last one. Otherwise, Steve will beat me to the punch on this one. So one of the things that we want to do is establish a stabilization fund. And in an upcoming school committee meeting, I will ask our group to go and vote to create a stabilization fund. So stabilization is an account, a revolving account that the school district can create that can only be used for capital projects. So if a rooftop unit were to go, let's say, a van, a roof need to get replaced, we could tap into that money to help offset or defray those costs. To create the stabilization fund, not only does this body have to go and approve the creation of it, but we have to have each Board of Selectmen approve this. So we will be bringing to both Boards of Selectmen a request after this body votes for it to allow us to create a stabilization account. We have talked in the budget subcommittee about how to fund said stabilization account, and the strategy that Katie and I were talking about is to at least every school year in this budget there's a $305,000 capital line in this budget, and that we would always carry at least $305,000 in the capital line within the budget. And at the end of any fiscal year, any funds unexpended in that capital line would roll into the stabilization account. So a line meant to support capital projects would roll into that. So so ideally, if we have funds that are rolling into that capital line, down the road, if we have need to repair something, we can again buffer an assessment to the town, because we would be able to use that money rather than having a larger assessment down the line.
Questions? Ms. Stout?
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. One is just a point. On the budget, there was something called program directors or something. I didn't know what that was. And you have the line items.
Is this in the
and it
staff?
says- Yes, program manager, staffing comparisons. All of them are self-explanatory as far as I can say, except program managers, too.
That's the Monomoy Cooperative Learning Program.
Okay,
In the prior year, we also had the Director of Make Way for Kids.
Okay, and make way is now in the regular
That's right.
budget. Okay, and the other thing is, you started to say something about we're adding these couple of positions, and you were starting to say something about, I'd like to know if we're taking anything out, if we're reducing gym or health or anything, any point.
So,
What
so
is
the,
that?
so there's there's essentially a 2 FTE reduction and a 2 FTE addition in this. So currently, there are 2 kindergarten sections at Chatham Elementary School that would roll up into 2 first grade sections. So there are currently 3 first grade teachers, so there's 1 FTE there in excess. Currently, there are 9 fifth grade sections at the middle school. The cohort coming up would be fine with 8 fifth grade sections, as the middle school has typically been. So there's an FTE there. There are also retirements that happen elsewhere in the system, so those positions I anticipate would be absorbed with the retirements, so that there aren't loss of jobs. It's just, but it's taking those 2 FTEs to have a fractional athletic director support, a fractional support for the community engagement coordinator, and then a full-time equivalent that's split between team chair and adjustment counselor, which could be 2 part-time people, but 1 FTE's worth of person.
So there won't be any other positions right now cut to
No.
below whatever it is this year?
Mr. Russell?
In my constant quest to save money, page 13, and Melissa, I probably am wrong. The hour is getting late. Under intensive needs special education teacher at the high school, which would balance off the schools that already have them, and I think that's a great idea. You're seeking a grant. You're nodding no.
So the idea is there are students that are out of district who.
Tuitions that would be coming back.
Right, who if they were educated in-house, the tuition money that's coming with them would be able to fund the teacher that they would need.
Okay, that being the case, thanks. Why then list 54,000 here? Is that in addition to their tuition
No,
benefits?
It's gotta be,
That's- that
you
should-
have
that-
to
it
have
should-
a dollar figure.
Yeah, it should be a cost-neutral thing.
Okay. Okay, got it. Yeah.
Mr. Duvall?
Two minor things.
Then we hit the major one.
Is that major?
What was that look, Katie? Is my understanding that for stabilization to be funded, there has to be a line item with money on it in the budget, correct or incorrect?
It has to be, well,
Has to be budgeted.
yes, yes.
So to take from Peter to hopefully potentially pay Paul isn't gonna happen because it has to have a dollar value associated with it.
Well, however, we could set up the account with the, making the decision that any unexpended balance in the capital,
But
that
it's not a
line would
budget
then
item.
be,
It's a line item in our
yes.
chart of accounts, but it's not on the budget, because there's nothing there.
Will be 0.
So would you
Budget
check
0.
that for me?
Okay.
And, everybody knows how I feel about using E&D funds. We're using over $500,000 more in E&D funds for the next budget than we did in the past. What non-reoccurring expenses is that $500,000 being used for?
I channeled you at the finance committee. I channeled you at the finance committee and asked that question.
Did you?
I did.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I don't want an answer right now, I mean, I don't expect one, but that really is the purpose for the E&Ds, is non-reoccurring expenses. And, I just feel very strong about, I understand needing to get the percentage number to be where the percentage number is. But we also have to protect our pad money for future years. And use $500,000 in one fell swoop, over and above the $300,000 that we already used. It's
370.
If I may, part of the discussion that we had, and we had a lengthy discussion about this, we felt that when we did our projections, that we had achieved where we had hoped to be much sooner than we had anticipated, and given that, maybe there would be funds to support.
So none of the excess that we currently own, over and above our 5%, is gonna be credited back, it's just gonna go into use as E&D.
The-
Do we have a conversation that we're over and above our cap,
$10,000,
and that has to be given back to
Right.
the towns?
right.
So is that being given back to the towns over and
That's-
above the 800?
No, included in the 800,
Thank you.
yes. So does that make,
Mr. Russell?
Katie, just thinking here from Steve's point, not so much E&D, because I share also, I just felt in the subcommittee that the future is now, for a lot of reasons regarding that assessment percentage. But if Steve happens to be right, couldn't we, in this discussion the next few weeks, add $1,000 to a line item called stabilization now?
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I believe we could say, we would budget it at $1,000, and any unexpended funds in this line would then be deposited into a stabilization account going forward.
Ms. Stout?
I agree with you, Steve, on the E&D, and in my limited experience meeting with the selectmen, it seems as though, and I do think the selectmen are very supportive of the school in general, but I see a discrepancy on, they have something called free cash that's equivalent. I would like for us to get a meeting of the minds where whatever their percentage of free cash is what they accept for us to have in our E&D, because it seems as though they're always pushing, use up that. And then the other thing is, I'm thrilled about this point that you're making, where only the school, not department anymore, but only the schools have to pay for our health insurance, and the others come out separately. I would really love, when this gets printed up, if that could be explained on the very first page, because the general public, if they're looking at this at the library or anything, that's what they want to see, that the number is equivalent to other things. And it really is, because of the calculations being different. So thanks for bringing that up.
Mr. Duval?
The town has two vessels, like we can have two vessels. And our free cash one is stabilization fund. We have E&D, and regional school districts can have the stabilization fund, which is what we're trying to set up so that we are able to take care of some of those capital things and maybe keep our percentage down that way.
Right.
But
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. As Ms. Isernio said, this is the first in a long haul of meetings and explanations, so this is by no means over. Thank you very much. All right, and we move into our subcommittee reports. We have an ad hoc strategic planning subcommittee report.
I'll go.
Mr. Traffy.
We had a very exciting meeting before this exciting meeting.
I think my
Very good,
meeting's more
Steve.
exciting than yours was.
Where Steve and Sharon painted a perfect picture of the past and how things have been done. So with that, we have the frameworks of a new plan in the stages of planning a plan, I would think. Okay? So we're
You
going to
planned
bring
the plan?
together the community and the school heads and hopefully come up with some great ideas. Today was just the first meeting of many. Any questions?
Further.
That was an excellent update of your planning of the plan,
I'm looking forward to
of
the
the
next one.
strategic plan.
A lot of alliteration, Steve. Good.
Well done. Thank you. Mr. Carpenter, no superintendent's report, I hear?
I believe that Mr. Duval needs to get some rest after this cold.
No, you're good? I wasn't trying to be that rude, but it's kind of trying to as well. All right, so we move on to our last action item, and since our disposal of surplus materials, Ms. Long isn't here, somebody's gonna jump in? Somebody's gonna jump in, or am I going to point fingers? Really? Mr. Caraffy, you're the one that seems to be looking at it.
I was
No?
just planning the
Who has it
next.
up? Ms. Richardson, you have it in front of you. I think I hear you making a motion, yes? Ms. Richardson? Really? Does nobody want to go home? Please. Please?
I move
Thank you, Mr. Duvall.
that we declare as surplus equipment from Chatham Elementary School, 10 17-inch HP monitors, 30 notebook adapters, 7 Windows Server hard drives, 3 Windows Server hard drives, several hundred RAM. That's a nice one. 6 workstations, HP, 19 wireless access points, 5 HP keyboards, 1 projector, 1 computer 3000, and 11 used Dell laptops.
We can continue to the second packet, which is also from Chatham Elementary.
Also from Chatham Elementary. Several wood blocks, 1 plastic table, 1 broken binder, 1 greenhouse, 1 stand with computer equipment, 1 wood shelves, 2 easels, 1 standing whiteboard, 1 chalkboard, 1 in-focus machine, 1 globe, 1 chair, 1 bathroom chair, and 2 lights.
And I hear a second from,
I would second that. Thank you, Steve.
thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? That is unanimous. Now, I'm sure somebody will jump up for this one. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, now he talks.
Second.
Thank you. Now you guys are jumping in. I'm going to discuss it a little bit, I think. Just to punish you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That is unanimous, and we are adjourned at 9:09.
Hey, Joanne.
Not my
Very good, Barbara.
It's so fun.